Every time a budget battle happens in Congress, we hear the same excuse. We have to compromise so we can fight for spending cuts later. But that day never comes. It's always later. And in the meantime, the government keeps spending more. The national debt keeps growing and the value of your money keeps shrinking. The reality is simple. Spending is the issue. If you don't cut spending, there is no serious effort to fix the economy. And today I'm going to explain why that's rather irrefutable. Most people think inflation just means prices going up, but that's just a symptom. The real cause of inflation is when the government expands the money supply by spending money it doesn't even have. When the government runs these massive deficits, it doesn't just magically find the money. It borrows it, it prints it, or both. And that's where the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury comes into play. The Treasury issues these bonds. They're essentially IOUs that promise future repayment with interest, and the banks and the foreign governments and even our own Federal Reserve buy these bonds. But when there aren't enough buyers, or when the government wants to juice the economy, the Fed steps in and creates money out of thin air to buy up that debt. This increases the money supply. It devalues the dollars already in circulation and fuels inflation. This isn't speculation. It's exactly how the system works. The Federal Reserve is not a neutral body despite how it's presented. It operates hand in hand with the Treasury and Congress to enable this reckless spending. Every time the government overspends, the Fed accommodates it by manipulating these interest rates or directly injecting money into the system. The consequences of this are felt by you, not by the politicians or the banking elite, who benefit from first access to the newly created dollars. When they create money, it doesn't hit everyone at the same time. The government, the banks, corporations, they get their hands on it first when its value is highest. By the time it reaches you, if it ever does, it's already diluted. That's why your groceries, your rent, and gas get more expensive, but your paycheck never seems to keep up. Right now, the national debt is over $35 trillion. The reality is that the debt will really never be paid off. The government won't suddenly run a surplus large enough to wipe it out, and they won't admit that they can't pay it back. So instead, they take the easy way out by continuously borrowing money just to make these interest payments. This keeps this Ponzi scheme going, but only for so long. And at some point, they have two choices: default on that debt, which they will never do, or continue inflating the currency to cover the spending. And that's exactly what they've been doing for decades. This is why prices continue to rise, why wages never seem to keep up, and why the cost of living becomes unbearable. Every dollar they print or borrow is a hidden tax on the people. Yet every time someone brings up spending cuts, we hear the same tired excuse: now is not the right time, or we don't have enough votes, or we have to compromise to maintain power. In good economic times, they say government spending is necessary to invest in the future. And in bad economic times, they say government spending is necessary to stimulate the economy. When Republicans are in charge, they spend. When Democrats are in charge, they spend. There is never a good time to stop, according to them. So if anyone still thinks their favorite politicians will fix it later, history shows that very few politicians want to stick to their guns. And when they do, like Massey or Rand Paul, their own party gets mad at them. The problem isn't just bad policy, it's a built-in mechanism where the government, the Federal Reserve, and the banks all work together to keep spending, borrowing, and printing, knowing that the average person will pay the price. But here's the good news: it doesn't have to be this way. When the government stops inflating the currency and lets markets work freely, the economy naturally corrects itself. Cutting spending isn't just about reducing waste. It's about restoring economic stability and giving people back control of their own wealth. But let's be honest, fixing this mess does mean less people living off the government. The mammoth welfare state is unsustainable. Government dependency isn't just bad policy, it's a drain on productivity and massive distortion of the economy. Every dollar spent on bloated welfare programs and corporate subsidies and endless bureaucracies is a dollar stolen from the productive class, the people actually creating value. If the government truly wanted to fix the economy, it wouldn't just stop the reckless spending, it would slash regulations, it would eliminate useless taxes, and allow the market to function. Every unnecessary tax and bureaucratic restriction distorts the market. It crushes competition and makes it harder for businesses and individuals to thrive. Think about it. Without government artificially distorting the economy, prices would actually reflect supply and demand, not that government manipulation. Businesses could operate without having to navigate endless red tape, and more wealth would stay in the hands of people who produce it rather than being siphoned off to fund this bureaucratic waste. This isn't some impossible dream. It's exactly how economies grow when governments get out of the way. History shows that when spending is cut and taxes are lowered and regulations are removed, businesses, especially small ones, start to flourish and job creation skyrockets. And wages increase naturally. Now, if people want to see economic prosperity, it's not going to come from more government programs and more bailouts or more money printing. As cliche as it might sound, it's going to come from freedom. And freedom means taking responsibility for your own well-being, not expecting politicians to steal from someone else to give to you. So there's really only one solution. Stop the reckless spending now. If spending isn't cut, the economy is never going to get fixed. Deficits will continue, debt will keep climbing, inflation will get even worse, and your money will continue to lose value. There is no fighting another day. The fight is right now. The government won't fix itself, but people can demand a real change by refusing to accept these tired excuses. Really, the only way out of this mess is limiting the government, sound money, of course, and freer markets. So next time someone tells you that spending cuts can wait, you'll know better. The longer we wait, the worse it gets.